Welcome back to Chat Shit. Aiden, I cannot contain my excitement. I haven't been able to since Saturday because finals football is back. We got an absolute thriller at the SCG. 2 upsets to start the round before that. It was just everything you want out of a week of finals footy. Tell me about what it was like to be at that Swans game where we were.
Well, just to give a bit of context, my throat is still sore from a few days ago, screaming at the ground. The loudest I've ever heard the SCG. I couldn't hear myself for the last 15 minutes of that game.
I can't speak.
I heard Heeney and the guys in the interviews talking. They've never heard the SCG so loud. David King said he thinks that might have contributed 2 to 3 goals in the last quarter. How loud the fans were. Really rode the guys home, especially in a really tough game for them to keep going and keep running in that final quarter. I feel like it's the game that saved Week 1 of finals.
And you know what? One thing I want to talk about that game before we start analysing it, because we're going to start off with that Swans-Giants game. Where else can you start? It was the game of the round without a doubt. But I want to talk about the commentary during and post-game. As any interstate football fan, you often feel like the commentators don't quite acknowledge you. You feel that, when Swans beat Essendon, all of the post-game analysis is about how Essendon lost rather than how the Swans won, But they properly analysed and showed appreciation to all of the players and coaching attributes, everything that deserved appreciation. I think the commentators did a fantastic job, and it made me very glad as a Swans fan.
Well, it wasn't even just the analysis post-game. It was the commentary during the game.
Exactly,
as well. I mean, they were really getting around it. Maybe it was because it was 2 interstate teams together.
The Rolls-Royce, Heeney.
Oh my God.
Open goal square.
Ridiculous. Oh, that's some of the best commentary I've ever heard. I think the commentator as well said it perfectly after the Amadi goal that you can have little to no impact on the game, but if you could be ready to take that moment.
Yeah, I wish I knew which commentator said the classic coach's cliche.
Yeah,
may not be your game, but it can still be your moment.
Exactly.
But let's jump into that game.
Yeah.
I want to put the spotlight on 2 things. First of all, the Swans' unsung heroes, because they were put on full display. The first 2 I want to talk about are Cunningham and Rampy, who just go unsighted because that's their job. Their job is to be unsighted because the player that they're marking doesn't touch the ball. You had Toby Green and Brent Daniels, who I believe are arguably the best small forward duo in the comp.
Brent Daniels played that game?
Exactly.
Wow.
Them or Myers and Stengel. They're one of the best small forward duos in the comp. Between them, 0 goals, 0 goal assists. Brent Daniels, 11 disposals and 2 score involvements. Toby Green, 0 impact, 12 disposals. And Rampy and Cunningham were just unbelievable. And they've done it throughout the year in our 3 games against GWS. And then I want to talk about James Rowbottom, who has started to get his appreciation this year. But listen to this. In finals footy, where pressure is all over the place from every team playing now, in the whole league this week, the 8 teams, he had 10 more pressure acts than any other player in the comp.
Did you see what Heeney said in the interview post-game? He can do what he does because of the guys like Rowbottom in the
and JJ, James Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had 43 pressure acts. No one else in the comp got more than 33 in this round of footy. That's just unbelievable. And then the final unsung hero is Braden Campbell, whose grandfather, who was very close to, I hear, passed away the day before the match. He's the sub, which he has been for a few games this year because the Swans are back to full strength. Comes through and has... I thought I maybe had some Swans bias, but I've heard a lot of commentators saying it who aren't Swans fans. Maybe the best sub performance in history. It was ridiculous. Every time he touched it.
I do want to throw one more unsung hero in there.
Tell me.
It's Jake Lloyd.
Oh, yeah.
I have a stat for you. He had 888 metres gained. And just for a bit of context, because context is a great thing, that's the 6th highest in the entire AFL 2024 season.
Wow.
The 6th highest. We talked about Max Holmes was electric against Port. He had about 670 metres gained. 888 metres gained to kick that goal in the final quarter. I mean, he was talked about as well in the analysis, but doesn't get a lot of mentions.
I still think I beat Jake Lloyd in both a bench press and a 100-metre, but he put together a great performance.
God. The run in the final quarter he provided.
Jake Lloyd, it was amazing. And my second spotlight is the obvious one. Isaac Heeney. I'm using a lot of superlatives here, which I know can take a bit of credibility away, but Isaac Heeney, I think that might have been the best and most impressive performance I've ever seen from a player of any team, finals or not finals. He had so it was the consistent effort, and that's what David King highlighted after the game, the consistent effort to just put more in than his opponent's willing to put in, and to do that throughout the whole match. But then he also had about 4 highlights in that game, which for most players that have a decent career, that would be the highlight of their career. And he had about 4 moments in that one match. The Specky, which would have been mark of the year 100%. If it wasn't in finals.
And we'll talk about that soon.
We'll talk about that soon. The one-handed mark to take the goal. Obviously, the winning goal from 75 metres out.
Probably more.
Something like that. But it was just crazy stuff. We couldn't believe it. And the fact that he's doing that in finals, it just puts a massive smile on your face as a Swans fan.
The one person you didn't mention Papley in that.
Oh yeah, well he's one of the obvious stars. Yeah. The two other stars that had huge performances, Papley, 3 goal assists and a goal from 50 out, all in the final quarter.
Yeah.
We don't win that game without Papley playing as phenomenally as he did.
And what about the play when Sam Taylor and Brown and he got there to spoil, which led to the Heeney awesome goal?
Oh yeah, that's a best on ground performance in any game where Isaac Heeney's not playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chad Warner, one final mention, 7 clearances in the game, which was, I think, game high for the Swans, all in the fourth quarter. He had 0 at three-quarter time.
He was nowhere in the first 3 quarters either.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was well held, but props to him, because one of his weaknesses in his first couple seasons was his stamina. And now he's showing that he could show up in the fourth quarter. They had a good game plan for him, but in the fourth quarter, he had more legs than the GWS players. Incredibly impressive that he's worked so hard on that. But Dossie, tell me about the Port Geelong game.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't Geelong just know how to get it done? I mean, wow. I mean, Jezza set the tone with kicking goal of the year. I'm not going to be goal of the year, but a few minutes into the game, they panned to Chris Scott, and he almost gave a little nod, like he knew they were on. Like the names change, but like the results stay the same.
Yeah.
Rebuilding on the run.
I think that's such a beautiful way, but the names change, the results stay the same. 13
prelims or something in the last 15 years.
Hasn't really been seen in AFL history since maybe the Hawks in the 80s and early 90s. Maybe even better than that. It's all Chris Scott, isn't it?
But like the group of players that are now in the prelim finals includes September debutants like Sean Manor. Wow. 27-year-old, and this guy debuted this season.
Highest player rating of any player in the comp this round.
Yeah, played a lot in the VFL, was a good player, and Geelong picker. I mean, they just know how to find players. Lawson Humphreys, another one. I mean, where did he come from? The composure he showed in his first final. Jack Bowes to kick a couple goals. Ollie Dempsey, the rising star. Shannon Neal had a big game. And Oisin Mullen also debuted this season. He wasn't too bad for his first finals game.
I think it's very symbolic the fact that the Swans and Geelong are the two teams that have gotten a home prelim, because when you just look big picture, last couple decades they've been the two dominant teams, and it's just great coaching, consistent clubs that find a way to get there. And now that we're seeing how close the AFL constantly is, we've got this season, another stat, the smallest ever difference in percentage between the highest percentage team and the lowest percentage team in finals. The smallest difference ever. So that is a stat showing that this is the closest season ever for finals. And the two teams that find a way to shine through are those two teams that just, with the coaching and the system, always find a way.
100%. And one thing that was largely mentioned why Port were going to win this game was the midfield. They were supposed to run over that Geelong midfield. They lost clearance 40-36.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about some of the Geelong midfielders in just a second. But Butters, it was uncompetitive, and then he got injured, which was a bit of an excuse, but he was uncompetitive before he got injured. Rosie didn't have a great game. 4 clearances, very quiet night. Horn Francis is one that can hold his head high after that game. I do want to talk about where he started the game, actually.
What, at full forward?
On the bench.
Oh, yeah.
And then absolutely monstered by Dangerfield and Holmes in that midfield, who just...
Patrick Dangerfield. Can you believe he's 34 years old?
But just continuously gets it done. But he goes at every contest at 100%. You would never know he had problems with soft tissue injuries.
And the sort of things that we talk about with Chris Scott, people talk about the obvious things that, that they always just get it done. But when you look granular, Patrick Dangerfield, the last 3 or 4 seasons, has not had impressive regular seasons. He plays maybe 15 matches max. Half of them he's subbed off precautiously. And then it comes the finals in 2022, and they have him fully fit because they've been preserving him, and he's the best player in the final series. And look, again, he was the best player on ground by a country mile in that Geelong Port game. And it shows if he's being so selfless, if he wanted to play a full year, 85% game time, he could compete for a Brownlow still. But it's so selfless what all of these Geelong players do.
It's just testament to the coaching as well. The way that they're able to manage him, and he's very happy to be managed so he can bring his best in the games that matter. Like, I just want to go through some players of the game that I said Manor, who I talked about, 3 goals, his first final debut season, game high 3 goal assists, game high in score involvements, 13. Dangerfield, who we talked about, joint with Max Holmes, who was the most damaging player on the ground. Like, monster to Port midfield. That was flying, actually, coming to this game.
Are you going to mention Lawson Humphries?
I wasn't going to, no.
It's just, Lawson Humphries is the perfect example of one of these players that Geelong just picks and
it was really late in the draft.
It's like, oh, I guess that's just a guy that fills a list, and then suddenly you can kick with his wrong foot better than most players can kick with their correct foot. And he's just an example of another Geelong player that's going to be a star for the future.
100%. I just want to put the spotlight on something, and it's Port in finals.
Oof.
Straight sets last year, looking down the barrel of straight sets again. Butters unlikely to play next week, meeting an absolutely flying Hawthorn. You'd probably give Port no chance, but from what we've seen in finals, the favourites don't always win. As a team, I had a look at their average ratings on Champion Data.
Oh no!
Three of the five worst games they've played in the last 2 years have been the qualifying final and the semi-final last year, and the qualifying final this year.
That's a phenomenal stat.
3 of the last 5. That's about 50 games. Touch and go 50 games. And then it's a combination of coaching decisions and player performances as well. Jason Horne-Francis to spend the first 6 minutes starting on the bench, I just can't quite understand that. I mean, I had him as the most important player in the entire round to his team, and you start him on the bench. Maybe it's because you want him to come out and have some impact, but at least start him at full forward. At least have him on the ground so he can have an impact on the game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Not clamping down on Geelong's weapons. Max Holmes was able to run free the entire game, just did his own thing. Drew was never going to be the matchup with Holmes' speed. And then just players not stepping up. It's the second year in a row they're looking to go out straight sets.
Yeah, I think this Port Adelaide Geelong game was the most perfect example in this round that finals footy it's just a different sport to the home and away season. It's a completely different game. Geelong, they're so experienced. They know how to win finals games. Chris Scott, his coaching team, the experienced players at Geelong, they know how to win finals games. And Port Adelaide and Ken Hinkley, maybe they're just built for the home and away season. It's really hard to quantify that and to put your finger on it. But Port are just such a different team and a much worse team in finals.
Yeah, I think let's move on to what was the most heavily anticipated game of the round, the Friday night game, which disappointed a little bit from one side.
Oh yeah, it was the Bulldogs versus Hawks game.
Bulldogs versus Hawks, yeah.
I have a couple things that I want to put the spotlight on, but first, just to summarise the game, the Hawks are the best team in the comp since round 11. They are first in the league for points scored since round 11, and first in the league for points against. They're the best attacking team and the best defensive teams. They've conceded the least, is what I mean to say. It's just amazing. Everyone is loving to see it. I don't think there's a single fan base apart from the Bulldogs fans and now the Port fans who have to play them this week who aren't barracking for the Hawks. Obviously, I don't want to play them in the prelim, but it's just so infectious and so fun that you just want to see it. The fact that those star players, Nick Watson, Jack Ginnivan, these guys Connor McDonald, these guys who are so talented, but maybe some coaches wouldn't like the antics. Sam Mitchell is just empowering them to express themselves and getting the absolute best out of them.
I mean, they didn't have it all their own way. They were down 2 goals at quarter time. That's not easy being such a young team in your first final when the Bulldogs come out quite hot. And to respond the way they did, Bulldogs kicking 5 goals for the rest of the game. Yeah.
So I'm going to put the spotlight on the Hawks and then the Bulldogs. So for the Hawks, it's obvious all the exciting players, those young players that I've just mentioned, they're just doing an amazing job, and they have been every week. But the one thing that stood out to me this week was the Hawks' key defenders, specifically James Sicily, who was second best on ground after Jai Newcomb, and Jack Scrimshaw, who, between the two of them, they locked down Sam Darcy and Aaron Norton, and Jamari Ugle-Hagan was nowhere to be seen, who I think are unarguably, indisputably, that's the best key forward trio combination
without
in the league.
A doubt.
How the hell is that possible? The fact that Jamari Ugle-Hagan is the third best key forward on a team, he's miles better than any key forward on the Swans.
100%.
So their key forward trio is ridiculous, and they were really, really nullified by Scrimshaw and Sicily, who didn't just halve contests, they won them and took intercept marks. Scrimshaw taking 4 intercept marks, that's huge. So I thought that was incredibly impressive, that it's not just the excitement at the Hawks, they're winning it everywhere. Second spotlight is on the Bulldogs, and this is another year where they have heavily underperformed with what I'm going to argue is the best list in football.
Yeah, and if not the best one, it's top 2.
It's top 2, probably them and probably the Swans or GWS. Yeah. They're probably the 3 best lists in football. And Luke Beveridge is under immense heat. I've been saying it for about 3 years, and many have. Many have. That the Bulldogs list managers are probably the best list managers in football. They've built one of the most complete squads in the league, and Bevo wastes it with obvious poor decision after poor decision. And the worst part to me, and what would frustrate me the most as a Bulldogs fan, is that he doesn't take accountability. What really stood out to me in the post-game is that, so he has the best player in the comp at his disposal. When the game was turning against the Dogs and they needed Bontempelli, Bevo had him on the bench or out full forward. 75% game time in quarters 2 and 3, and only 4 disposals, spending most of his time on the ground at full forward. Bevo was asked about it in the post-game, and he chooses to pretty much attack the journalists instead of explaining the decision-making or recognising the mistake. At least maybe explaining the thought process of why he did it, because it is a fact. The journo didn't have the stats at his disposal at the time, except he was correct in his observation. So he's clearly, I know that when coaches like Longmire and Chris Scott, when they lose games and they're questioned about it, they take accountability, they talk through the mistakes, and they say, yeah, I was responsible for this, or maybe the players were responsible for this. Bevo just attacks journalists sometimes. Yeah. I don't really get it. So I get that he led the Bulldogs to a miraculous premiership. That was 8 years ago. And to me, it's time to move on before this incredible list has completely gone to waste.
Well, they've only got a few more years of Bont at its absolute peak. Obviously, they got Darcy coming through, who you think might win a Brownlow at some point in his career.
If any key position player can win it, guy 6'4" plus, it's Sam Darcy.
I mean, yeah, just look through the names on that list, and they really shouldn't be finishing 6th or 7th and going out not winning a final. So yeah, it's a little disappointing to see, but we're on the Hawthorn train. We're expecting to see them in the prelim final. We're going to be supporting them all the way until that prelim final. And we'll be there to boo against them as well. Supporting
them until that first whistle in the prelim final if they get there. So, Aiden, tell me about the final game. Maybe the most disappointing game, definitely for one fan club. Yeah. Brisbane versus Carlton.
Well, the start of the match was emphatic statement by the Lions. They kept the Blues scoreless through the first term.
It was ugly.
The first side since North Melbourne in 1974 to have 0-0 next to the name at that quarter time in a final. 60-0 down, had the commentator stat checking the lowest every halftime score in finals,
which was a 2.
Which was 2 points in 1903. Threatened that until the last few minutes of the second half when Cripps and someone else kicked another goal.
I love how old the AFL is because you just get some amazing records.
I know. This was the game that was probably the most one-sided pre-match. We didn't have much hope for Carlton, but we wanted to fight. We wanted we can't put everything we wanted them to bring energy, wanted them to bring excitement. They didn't play too badly against St Kilda the week before. We can't put everything on a bad Carlton. We've got to give props to Brisbane for their preparation and execution in the game. Ripped them apart in every single part of the game. One passage of play I just want to highlight is Harry Mackay missing everything from 50 metres. Almost missing his foot. And a few minutes later, Eric Hipp were taking a mark 40 metres from goal. Carlton being more interested in remonstrating and didn't notice Danaher just leading into an open goal for a tap-in.
Shows the frustration.
I'm just going to put the spotlight on the Carlton coaching box.
Are you going to talk about Chincotta not being picked?
That's one of the things, yeah. So benefit of hindsight, but they made too many changes, and it was always talked about before how many changes is too many changes. Didn't have a bad game against St Kilda till a couple weeks ago. Dropped a few performers who brought energy and excitement to the Carlton side. One of them, 19-year-old Ashton Moore. I don't know if you remember him from the St Kilda game, but he would have been pretty stiff to miss out. Bit of excitement. Had a pretty good game against St Kilda, and to drop him for some people that hadn't played football for quite a while. I mean, we saw when McInerney came in for the Swans, had probably his worst game in quite a while. Just wasn't football ready. TDK not starting. If he was right to go, start him. If he's not, don't make him the sub or don't play him. Had a huge impact when he came on and kickstarted a mini Carlton comeback where they got it down to 30 points, but too little too late, being 60-0 down. I mean, Sam Doherty was an unbelievable story to return from an ACL injury in 180 odd days. We don't really see that, to come back in the same season. Kicked a goal, which was awesome for the fans and the AFL just to see a guy, but he was very much off the pace.
Yep.
He was not ready for that game, not ready for that intensity. And to get a guy in coming off an ACL, playing no footy for that long, kick him into a finals game where Brisbane are going to bring high pressure, it just wasn't the right decision.
I think it was just I reckon the main point of that was probably just to lift the boys pre-game.
Yeah,
because he's such a loved player.
I understand that, and I love that he could play. But it's not the time. I mean, you're in a elimination final against a team that's flying. And then, like you said, Chincotta not playing. Another one. We know Lachie Neale. We know he struggles when he's tagged. You've got a tagger at your disposal when you don't play him.
Even if you don't want to tag Lachie Neale, what about the All-Australian halfback?
I'm about to get there because I'm about to talk about the players of the game. Zorko ripped the heart out of Carlton. We know going in, the All-Australian halfback, Zorko. Carlton was 60-0 down before they finally made a change and put Hollands on him.
I've never seen a guy roam so free for so long in a final.
God, the composure kicking into the corridor, the football IQ, when to come for his man and when to intercept, efficient with the ball. He was a massive contributor to the game being done at the half. 29 disposals, 7 intercept possessions, 8 score involvements from halfback is incredibly impressive. McCluggage set the tone in the first quarter, 10 touches, 225 metres gained, 2 score involvements and 3 clearances just in quarter one. I mean, Ashcroft, what a player Brisbane were missing at the start of the season, start of the year. The composure he showed in his first final and the run he provided, it's great to see.
He went at 95% as an on-ball midfielder.
And he didn't have a ridiculous amount of touches, but he was hugely damaging with those, and they'll definitely need that against GWS. I mean, the one thing Carlton they can take out of is that the score was a bit respectful at the end, but I mean, it was just some garbage time fourth quarter goals.
Brisbane, once they got 6-0 up, were pretty much game.
I mean, you know what really sold it for me? When Charlie Cameron kicked a goal and Country Road comes on the speakers and they pan the camera to him and he's just singing. He's just singing while...
The only reason the lead came back is that Brisbane were game managing, didn't want to get 100%, injured.
100%. Brisbane took their foot off the gas, and I saw someone in the comments of when AFL posted the game on Instagram saying it was a bit embarrassing that Brisbane didn't demolish them by more. I mean, the game was done.
Oh yeah, of course you're going to... Yeah. If you're Lachie Neale and if you're the midfield coach, you're going to be telling Lachie Neale just 50%. Don't injure yourself.
If you win by a point, you win by a point. But the game's finished. But yeah, it was very disappointing from Carlton in that game to put up that performance in a final in a season where they were second and a premiership favourite from probably round 13 to round 19, where they only won 2 of their last 8 against West Coast and North. So a huge fall off. You'll be expecting a lot more from probably the same list next year with Carlton.
Yeah, it was a lot to do with injuries, to be fair. I don't often like to blame injuries because, for example, you look at the Swans, who's maybe our 2 best players last year in Mills and Parker were injured for the first 12 rounds of the year. Mills a bit longer, and we managed
to get a look in.
Yeah, and managed to be the best team in the competition for that stretch. So sometimes you just find a way, except to be set in your ways for the season, and then a lot of your star players go. Very, very difficult, and it was tough for Carlton.
100%. I was going to move on straight into my important player footy pyramid, and I'm only including the players that are playing in the semi-final round.
So this is who Aiden thinks are... It's going to be a little bit wild card. It's going to be who are the most important players to their team for teams that are still remaining in finals.
100%. I'm only including the 4 teams playing in semi-finals this week.
Oh.
So yeah, I've got the 6 players. So in the third tier, we've got Toby Green. For GWS.
Because he's been nowhere half the time?
For his standards, and well done to the Swans, but he did have chances. I mean, the Swans kept him very quiet in the stats, but he had one where he was walking in on an open goal and missed. He had one from 50, that's a tough chance, but still a chance. With a tough matchup coming against Starcevic, if he can get it done, they're going to need the goals.
I have a stat for you about Toby Green.
Go on.
This season, against top 8 teams, he has been the 17th highest rated player for GWS. 17th on their list this season against top 8 teams. So he really, against good defensive systems, has not been able to find a way through, and they're going to have to address that this week because he's so important for them.
Yeah, so he'll need to get it done. He can't have another quiet game like that. Joining him as well, I've got the pair. I've got Scrimshaw and Sicily. Frost is out for the rest of the year. Now, that's quite...
Sad for him.
Sad for him and a big loss for Hawthorn. And up against Danaher and Hipwood and the big O floating forward... They need to step up again. I mean, they had an awesome game against a big Dogs forward line, but they're going to have to do it again, and these two are going to be vital, especially even more undersized now. I don't know who's going to come in, but whoever's coming in is going to be off the back of no AFL footy.
Because that defence has been so solid, they haven't had guys coming through. One of the benefits of having injuries throughout the year is that guys get rotated around and they're match ready.
Yeah, so they're going to have to step up again. They're going to have to play tall, but we're going to back him to get it done. Moving up, I've got Jason Horne-Francis again, who was the top of the pyramid last time. So, like I said earlier, one of the only ones who can hold their head a little bit higher after that performance. but he needs some help, and if he just puts in that performance and gets some help, it wasn't massive numbers, but like we said, he just needs to get around 20 touches, and he'll be impactful. But yeah, he just needs to go again, maybe a bit more impact. But yeah, I liked his game from the weekend. Harris Andrews as well. So if he can convincingly beat Hogan, and he's beaten guys all through the year, I put the house on Brisbane winning this game.
That's going to be the matchup of the round, Hogan versus Andrews.
100%, and Andrews had a massive game. I mean, he wasn't up against much. I mean, Carlton didn't put up a big fight, but he was still big in that Brisbane defence. And if he can get it done against Hogan, who was good against the Swans in the first quarter and caused a problem, especially coming up the ground and taking marks. But if he gets it done, the long way GWS will have to go to win that game. Topping the pyramid, I've got John Newcomb. Take out the first part of the season. Newcomb has been absolutely unbelievable. Like, he was off the pace in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that's when I picked him in Supercoach.
Yeah, in Supercoach you had him, and he was very disappointing.
You can see what I saw now.
Yeah, exactly. He's extremely disappointing. Got a haircut, and he's one of the best mids in the competition. Against this Brisbane midfield of McCluggage, Neil, Dunkley, Ashcroft, he's without Day again, which has now been confirmed. He's not playing that game. He's going to need to go big again. He's going to be a huge part of winning clearance against a team that's really dominant in clearance. They're going to have to get the ball out of the middle. They're going to want to put their defence under the least amount of pressure, especially with Frost being out and the defenders having to play extremely tall again.
John Newcomb's become a genuine star of the league. I love that you've put him on the top here, because he's one of those guys that could easily be unappreciated because he never had the hype early on. He was a low draft pick, very low.
He was a mid-season draft pick, and I think that's maybe the reason why he didn't have that sort of expectation on him. If he was drafted like 4th or 5th, we have that higher expectation. But the fact he's done it from mid-season, I don't think people realise what he's actually doing. It's how well he's playing. Even in a first half of last year, a bad Hawthorn side, he was stepping up and he was big. And then when they came home strong last year, he continued to be big. Rough start to this year, but he's coming home. He's one of the best mids in the competition. Yeah, and he's one of those. He's just continuing to add to his game. Like, he burst out a couple of years ago, late in the season in 2022, and people just thought, "Wow, this is a cool guy. He's a good ball winner, tough nugget inside." And now he's really shown. But in the couple of years since then, he's not just a tough ball winner. He's incredibly skillful. He's got an engine that can go all day, and he's very, very talented too. And so he's just continuing to build on it, and he's phenomenal. 100%. And I know that you've done the top 5 players of the round in finals footy, so I'll get you to just take us through them.
So we got the top 5 players of the round. All of them we've talked about already. At number 5, I'm doing something crazy. It's stupid. I've got the sub.
Braden Campbell. Played a quarter of footy. I like it.
Best quarter and a half of footy you'll ever see, and he got him 5th best player of the round. 4th best, I've done your trick where I've got 2 guys in there. Yeah. Ryan Myers and Sean Manor.
I like it. You could probably throw Stengel in there as well.
Yeah, it's exactly what Toby Green and Brent Daniels dreamed that they, like GWS fan dreamed that they would be in finals. So we'll see if anything can happen there. Number 3, I've got Pat Dangerfield, 34 years young. As I say earlier, and heavy on this, if he wanted to, and if Chris Scott wanted to, he could still be competing for Brownlows. Yeah. Especially in that Geelong midfield where...
Assuming the soft tissue injuries held up.
Yeah. But he manages himself for times like this so he can shine. And shine he did.
Yes.
Number 2, Jai Newcomb. We just talked about him. Nothing more to be said. And then number 1...
Who else?
I was thinking of doing 5 Isaac Heeneys for this list. He was the best around, and it was the best finals performance I think we'll see this year.
Now, we've got 2 games to predict into the next round. We both got 3 out of 4 in the first round of finals. I got the Geelong game right. You got the Hawthorn game right. And the last 2 we predicted the same. So both 3.
Yeah, but I got the Geelong game wrong by 84 points.
Yeah, but I think majority would have got that. I was deciding... I changed my decision at the last second. But we'll go for the next 2 semi-finals. The first one, Port versus Hawthorn.
Give me Hawthorn by 75.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to take Hawthorn. I was thinking of doing something stupid, like trying to go Port Adelaide, but I just can't see it at all. The second game is the really tough one. GWS against Brisbane. I'm still unsure of who to pick here. This is a real 50-50 again.
Mm-hmm. Brisbane, okay, going into the season, these were the 2 premiership favourites.
They were.
So let's have a bit of perspective for a second. It's pretty
my
cool.
prediction for the final.
Both of us predicted these 2 as the 2 grand finalists.
Yeah.
I had GWS winning it. You had Brisbane winning it all.
I did, yeah.
I think Yeah, these are two very complete teams with talent all over the ground. I think GWS at home, and I think they'll take so much confidence out of that game against the Swans. They've been hardened by that, and they'll think, we just took it up against the best, and if it wasn't for some ridiculousness from Heeney and Papley, we just would have taken down the best. I think they win. I think GWS win.
I'm really happy you went that way because I'm going to go the other way. And I think, yes, they were awesome in that game against Sydney, but they put a lot into that game against Sydney.
You don't think they can get up in time?
I think they can get up, but I don't know if they can get up in an intense game for 4 quarters, and I think Brisbane are a lot more ready. And it'll be a tough game. If Brisbane can kick straight, and it's been a massive thing, if they can kick straight, they're going to get this game done. I'm going to back them to kick straight. I'm going to pick Brisbane.
You're going to back Joe Danaher to kick straight?
I'm going to back 50% Joe Danaher to kick straight.
I think if Joe Danaher gets shots only from the boundary 55 out, then maybe he kicks straight, but not if his shots are from in front.
I like it. 50-50 player from anywhere on the ground, along with Marbior Chol, who's 50-50 from anywhere on the ground. But yeah, that's it for today's episode.
Tell us in the comments, do you back Marbior Chol more to take a specky or kick it from 20 out straight in front? Because I back him better for a specky.
I like it. We'll see you all in the next one.